In 2008, Lucasfilm attempted to relaunch the Indiana Jones brand with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the first indie film in nearly 2 decades. Despite a mixed reaction, the film was a financial success, and a highly successful LEGO Indiana Jones video game proved that audiences were hungry for more. But at the same time, LucasArts had encountered a major failure in their attempts at the next great Indiana Jones game, Staff of Kings, whose trying production was ultimately abandoned and the story launched only as third-party versions. While elsewhere in the gaming landscape, a game designer named Todd Howard was making waves with the groundbreaking Fallout 3 and starting to develop ideas for what his next project would be.
Raiders, still my favorite movie of all time. No debate. It's the best movie ever. I enjoy it every single time. Love the character, love the story. The opening is the greatest movie opening ever. And I just love everything. I love everything about it. It's one of those things like, what's on your bucket list? Like, oh, I want to make an Indiana Jones game. And I had pitched Lucas. I had met some people there and pitched them back in 2009 this Indiana Jones game concept. They wanted to publish, kind of the deal fell apart. They wanted to publish it, and we were a publisher, and so we didn't do it. And I didn't really have the team to do it. I just was going to figure that out after we agreed to a deal. And, well, we made Skyrim, so it worked out.
So with no movies, video games, comics, or novels in active development, the Indiana Jones brand once again went silent. The entire 2010s went by without a single new Indiana Jones adventure in any medium. But with pre-production finally gearing up for Indiana Jones 5 under Disney, interest began to form for what would be the next era of Indiana Jones content.
I've wanted to make an Indiana Jones game forever. I'd had this idea for what it would be like and the story, what Indy was going after, what period of his life it was in, what kind of arc he was going to have. And as the years went on, I thought, who would be like the best studio in the world to make this? And it was my friends at Machine Games.
Lucas, now part of Disney, and they're doing a lot more of licensing and working with people. And so I knew some folks there and said, I have this idea that I pitched a long time ago. And they loved it. And again, the internal team that I had not only didn't have the time, they probably weren't as good a fit as Machine Games, who's done the Wolfenstein series, who is the perfect fit for this game with storytelling and how they record it. And it's awesome. They're just doing an incredible job with that game. People are going to be, if you like Indiana Jones, it is a definite love letter to Indiana Jones and everything with it. It is a mashup. It is a unique, it isn't one thing intentionally. So it does a lot of different things that, myself and Yurik and the folks at Machine Games have wanted to do in a game. So it's a unique thing.
It actually started with an idea from Todd Howard. He had been thinking for years about creating a story around the concept of the Great Circle. So when we got this opportunity to work on an Indiana Jones game, it felt like the perfect match. And like I said, it's this mysterious anchored in history, and it also spans the world, which is a great thing. It's just this perfect starting point for a globe-trotting narrative, where in a way the course was already in a way set for us. And exploring the meaning of the Great Circle and how we could use it for an intriguing story has been really fun as well. It's, especially the process of figuring out why the bad guys are pursuing the truth about it and why Indy is trying to stop them. And this specifically is something that we always put a lot of effort into, just the goal of tying the story to our hero's own personal journey.
There's one thing that I often called out, and I've said it many times before, I quickly mention it again, but it all comes down to philosophy and just how we operate as devs. We usually, or at least in my mind, and we do have something that I usually refer to as like our 3 core pillars of Machine Games. One of them is obviously art, and that intent lies, everything within animation, audio, and art, everything that is in my jurisdiction at the moment. Then, of course, we have gameplay, trying to push the envelope constantly, but also try to push the experience throughout the campaign so that you get the sensation that you are encountering new combat systems, or get new toys to play with, or wow, this environment looks like that, and due to that context I can now do these type of things. And then the one that everything starts with, which is the narrative. And then we have kind of that, holy or unholy trinity, whatever you refer to, is bind together by the tech, and enabling all of those three to work together and shine as much as they can.
And I think, from my perspective, coming from more of a design perspective, I want to, build on what you're saying, because the narrative, I think, I don't know how it works in different studios, but at Machine Games, everything starts with the script, with the narrative.
Yeah.
Like in the first couple of months of the project, we have more or less locked down what the whole story, all the characters, all the important moments.
That's where the mechanics come from, and systems,
and that's
design.
the thing. Like that's where you start.
Yeah.
And then again, what I think might be different at Machine Games is that there is an enormous respect to staying true to that. Like, obviously we change stuff, we remove stuff, we add stuff, but the story needs to be prioritized all the way down to, micro gameplay interactions. They need to support the story coming across.
In this case, of course, we had a lot of materials to go through, and we spent countless of hours just rewatching the films, especially the two movies, I think, that are closest to the game, which is Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. And looking at the movies both from a broad stroke perspective to get into the mood and why, but also to some extent, scrutinizing them for details and the small hooks that are key to the identity of everything that is Indiana Jones. And in addition, then we have one of the best resources through our partnership with Lucasfilm Games, and working together with them on this project has been invaluable. Just this cave of knowledge about the character, which has been fantastic. And Lucasfilm has been excited about the project from day one, and have been incredibly supportive and helpful in bringing the story and the character in Indiana Jones to life through not just our story, but also through gameplay.
Yeah, it's been great having access to writers, art directors from Lucasfilm, people who've worked with the Indiana Jones property for decades, having their input. I mean, some of these people know everything that could be has ever been written about Indy, and having them to bounce ideas off and get some of their own input has been hugely invaluable. I mean, our own writers are huge indie fans as well, and just been scouring all of the the countless wikis that are out there written about everything, all of the comics, additional books and so forth, just to build their knowledge. Other things as well. I mean, we managed to get access into some of the Lucasfilm archives as well, which has been for indie fans has been an absolute dream come true, to get access to some of these things that perhaps not so many people have seen. But our artists have been wanting to make sure everything is authentic as possible. We bought replicas of Indy's famous fedora made by the original hat makers who made the original prop from the first film, proper recreations of his iconic jacket and so forth, just to make sure everything is absolutely spot on.
I mean, we have from the very, very early days of the project been in continuous meetings with them and communication. And I think that, I don't want to say that we were lucky, but it just happened to be that our vision as fans of the IP, the character, we had our vision of what we wanted to lift forward and what we wanted to portray, how we wanted to portray Indiana Jones, because he is a character that has a couple of different personas throughout his timeline, basically. So what we chose was stay close to Raiders of the Lost Ark, and what type of his character traits are the ones that we want to push forward and highlight, and which versions of him do we want to not emphasize and move forward with. And when we presented our vision of what we wanted to do, that aligned with Lucasfilm Games' vision of what they also felt, yes, this sits well with us in terms of what type of Indiana Jones we want to make and portray. And I think that's why I'm saying, like, lucky if that's such a thing, but we aligned very early on. And thanks to us aligning very early on, I think the collaboration with them has been very, very cool.
I think shout out to Craig Derrick.
Yes, of course.
The wonderful
executive producer at Lucasfilm Games.
Craig Derrick.
This is not our first licensed game we worked on, so we know some of the pitfalls to avoid. But if there's anything that I think helped us here as well is again going back to the process we have, like starting having the story nailed down from the start, that allowed us to agree on all the important stuff, within months of starting development of this game. And once you have cracked that, the rest is easier. Like, that's going to be the part that they are most protective about. Like, how are we portraying the characters? What is the story we want to tell? With that done early, you can spend time talking about details almost. And they can fit in with their expertise about everything Indiana owns and the access they have to everything. And we can work on just trying to get the game to live up to the story we have presented, to the story we've written, for the rest of the development. So
I mean, there's been invaluable sessions and insights, things that we couldn't possibly know about how certain things are portrayed within the franchise. So it's been a really cool learning experience and invaluable relationship with them throughout the entirety. And I mean, sure, talking about them being protective of their brands or their IP, with all rights, but we haven't experienced that as being like a negative aspect of development. It's been a very cool and interesting collaboration with them. And I think that, like I said, I think that we just aligned very early on, and then we continued to have regular meetings throughout. I've been in meetings basically on a weekly basis for 4 years or whatever with them, and all different representatives within Machine Games have had meetings with representatives of their departments as well. Audio, narrative, lore, all of these things.
One of the first objectives of the team was an ambitious one, but one that would mean so much to Indiana Jones fans: a playable recreation of Raiders of the Lost Ark's iconic opening.
I think we're very happy in the end how it turned out as well. But there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears involved in getting it to the stage that it is when we ship the game. But I do think that we often, tend to ourselves think from the perspective of, wouldn't it be cool if, and yeah, it would be super cool. Wouldn't it be super cool to play that, swapping the sand for the idol, solving the puzzles, doing the whole thing, the trap stuff. Wouldn't that be cool? Would it be insane and very difficult? Yeah, absolutely. Is this a crazy challenge? Yes, absolutely. Let's do it anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that that's kind of the approach that we very often have, in terms of we do not back down from the challenge that we put in front of us, and sometimes we beat ourselves, for it in retrospect. Like why did we? But this is one of those times when it actually turned out very satisfying in the end. And of course, also, during the process of doing that, we have the best reference in the world, right?
Yeah.
Which also proves then a bit challenging later on, because now we don't have the best reference in the world. We do have the best reference in the world in that sense and context of the movies, but not frame by frame. And that, of course, also proves to be extremely difficult, because how do you match that? And I mean, I've seen plenty of people doing comparison videos and whatnot, and obviously it is not, pixel perfect frame by frame all the time.
You have a lot of artists and level designers that are extremely fatigued by frame stepping that scene to try to figure out, like, how do these clips fit together? And, you know, that left turn corridor before the pressure plate puzzle, for example, like, you have like a corner of the screen showing that's probably how it looks. I actually don't know for sure if it's if we can say that it's 100% correct, but yeah, they really worked to try to recreate it. But something that I find interesting with that whole scene is that it kind of started as a design exercise for, you know, what if we break down this scene into gameplay moments? What kind of gameplay moments would that be? So this was before we had, you know, some of the core systems, like the interaction system in place. So by going through that whole scene and saying like, oh, and then you pick up the golden idol. Well, how does that work? Like you switch it to the sandbag. How does that work with the controller?
We all know how it works in our minds, but how does it work on a controller?
So going through that exercise was really interesting because it also helped us understand what kind of interactions would we want to be doing as a player in an Indiana Jones game. The flop side of this was, of course, we did this super early and, you know, recorded animations and spent a huge amount of work of getting a first version of this in. And then, of course, you need to change the mechanics down the line. So now this, you know, whole opening scene needs to be reworked with new mechanics. And that's where it becomes a lot of, you know, rework and changes and fixes going over throughout the whole development to get it to fit the game that comes later.
It's also, I mean, it's ties back to your previous question as well in terms of expanding the world and the nuggets of like pieces of information you have. You know, we see Forrestal, you know, for example, dead in a trap. So okay, cool. We can make an opportunity out of that and actually find his abandoned camp and tell a little bit more backstory. You know, expanding the experience. And I think that has also been, you know, throughout the entire work with this game, a very interesting journey to try to see around the corner what's happening over there. And this beginning of the game really offered some really cool solutions or, you know, opportunities for that. And also, I just wanted to quickly throw out there that, you know, specifically working on this section of the game, the beginning of it, we got, you know, a very valuable help from Lucasfilm Games in terms of the collaboration with them, getting access to their archive, seeing, you know, photos from sets, concept art that I've never seen from the original movie, you know, outlining some components or design feature that you could, okay, now we understand how this actually connects in the movie, because it's impossible to understand just looking at the screen. And that was also very, very helpful.
It's a little bit different, this game, for us in many ways. It's, you know, usually we're used to have this, you know, heavy weapons, gun blazing shooters. And this is a little bit different. It's, we are making a proper adventure game here. And it's also a game that is a little bit more directed towards a wider audience. A bit of a new thing for us.
I imagine.
And overall, you know, when sketching out the foundation of what our gameplay was going to focus on, we pretty much always do this, but in this case, we focused a little bit more on it. We prioritized that we had to stay true to Indy's personality and who he is above all. You know, he is a normal human being. He's not this caped superhero, or he's not a superhero hero, as we like to say. He is flawed. He makes mistakes. He stumbles. You know, there is weight to his movement, and we have this gritty, pulpy edge to the action. But at the same time, he's also rather athletic. He's an excellent fighter. You know, and he also have an enormous amount of luck as well. And at the same time, he's the best archaeologist in the world. So focusing on all of these things, in a way, it makes the gameplay feel in line with this matinee action. You know, this classic matinee action adventures that the movies were celebrating. Something I think Indy himself also personifies in a way. Something that we have been focused on a lot when it comes to gameplay. He solves problems with his mind first and really relies on smarts and not this excessive combat that we have seen or done before with the Wolfenstein games. So, when you are playing the game, choosing the more authentic stealthy indie route or just, some classic old fist fighting will be a benefit to the player and more times than not also make for a very fun and challenging experience. But in my mind, and what we're asking the player to do in our game is really to step into the shoes of the world's most famous archaeologist. And we strongly believe that the first-person perspective is what makes this experience the most immersive. It allows the player to focus on the adventure, to feel like they are interacting with the world around them. And also, since first-person games are very much part of our pedigree here at Machine Games, it felt like a natural approach for our take on indie and a feature that will set it apart from many other action-adventure games out there. And I think, it is something that brings something really unique to this game. And we also, like you mentioned as well, Malik, we do bring in this mix of first and third-person gameplay just to... we wanted to have the mix of both, so players could literally have in this point of view with first-person alignment to really be transported into the story. But at the same time, we felt doing third-person was also important so that the player can see the iconic character. And just because of that, then we are using that perspective as well throughout the entire game.
Yeah, no, there was never. We didn't even consider this doing anything else than first-person for numerous reasons.
Yeah.
So, one of the biggest reasons is we believe strongly that the game, this is what's best for the game. This is the way to experience this type of game in our mind, the type of adventure game that we wanted to do. And then there are other things that comes into it, of course, as, what we're good at and what we have a long experience in doing, what type of game mechanics and what type of perspectives, down to the systemic stuff of how the player moves around and traverse the world and all the first-person animations and all of that. But it was never really a hard decision for us.
No.
We talked about it, of course, a lot because we knew there would be an expectation that people think that modern adventure games should be in third person. So we were very much aware of the expectations
and the challenge to convince everyone that this was right for the game. Now, we announced it a year out, and that's kind of the answer to your question. We knew from the get-go that the first thing we need to show about this game would be to show that this is a first-person game and why we think that's the way to go with this game. We knew that would be the topic of conversation. So that whole announcement we did there was very much focused on the first person question, and that's exactly what's happened as well when we showed it. That was the question that people asked, and I remember being very, very happy with how that played out, because for every person who said like, why is this first person, should be third person, there was a person on the other side in that comment thread or whatever saying like, no, this is Machine Games, it needs to be first person. So they kind of had gone through the exercise that was so natural for us, that we knew what we wanted to make with this game, and saw that it has to be a first person game because of our heritage and what we want to do with it.
But I think it also comes down a lot to, for us at least, I feel that it very often comes down to us trusting the process, believing in the mission that we have and believing in the decisions that we're taking, and then stick to them and execute on them. Mm-hmm. And we would never, of course, sway around due to a common field somewhere saying like, this should be third person. Okay, let's change everything. We also knew that when people will get their hands on this, which is also another big beat, at least in my mind, when we started to see the hands-on in terms of media and people actually start playing and testing it, those type of comments also start to just like avalanche in terms of like, no, now I've tried it, it makes perfect sense. I was, skeptical, or I thought that it could be weird, but then when people have actually tried it, it's like, no, it makes perfect sense. So that, of course, just, kind of not justified, but it was good to see that the mission that we believed in and that we knew for us was true, turned out to be true for more than just the devs. I think it's there's different aspects of this that we can talk to. I think that one thing that very quickly we, of course, identified was the things that we do not feel we need to prove, like shooting a gun in first person. That's like, we know we can do that.
Kind of figured that out.
Yeah, so let's put that aside. Let's do not even think about that for the moment. What other core components of this character will actually emphasize the sensation of adventure? Puzzles, the whip, traversing the environment, the platforming aspect. So I think depending on the different levels of difficulty in terms of developing those vastly different components in the game, kind of staggered up in terms of when in production we start looking at them.
Yeah.
So
in many ways it was a tricky game to make in that sense, because like it always came back to like, we want you to feel as Indiana Jones, we want you to be Indiana Jones, and that doesn't come for free. That needs to bleed into every mechanic of the game, and that was also the strongest argument against like the question, like, you're making a first-person game, we are not gonna see Indiana Jones, how are you gonna present the character? So working on across the bar, on every mechanic, on every situation, on everything to build that up, that was kind of the thing that we knew we needed to do, but it took the whole length of the project to really pull that off. So it was a constant not struggle, but something we had to keep push constantly throughout.
But I think there was also a moment in time in the production cycle, you and I often talk about this, where things just started to fall into place. Like, how do we see the blend in between the first person, second to second, minute to minute gameplay? How do that actually transforms and translates into the going out to third person in traversals, mixing that up with, getting the right amount of cutscenes in, which of course also shows you in your full glory with hat and jacket and face and all. And when we actually start seeing a fully playable sequence of the game where all these components were fairly correctly implemented, I think that's a moment when we also started to feel that, okay, this will actually become really, really cool.
But that all of that stuff is so hard because,
I can't say a day when it happened.
No, I can.
You can?
Yeah,
Nice.
or for me, when that happened, what was actually the... No, I can't. No, I don't know. We had a vertical slice video, or when we had the announcement, like when you put something together like this build of the game that's playable, and you also cut together a video to show it to executives and whatever, that shows the game as it's meant to be rather than what it is.
Yes.
A lot of the times. And that in some ways resets your own view of what you're making, because now you can evaluate that snippet, that slice of what you're doing, and this game is a sum of so many different parts, like globe-trotting adventure, but all the mechanics, all the different gameplay styles of puzzles and fighting, hand-to-hand and shooting and everything. So how does that feel? Like, that's something that you can't answer before you build it, and that's a question that the whole team needs to understand, that to be able to finish, to build the finished product, and that takes a lot of time to get all those features to a level of completion where you can feel it, and that came in late, like a year before we shipped this, when we started seeing, oh, this is the game we're making. Breaking down what you would expect if you were indie, and finding alignment with what do you want to do as a player in these kind of situations, and doing all those things. That's how this feature list was created, more or less.
Yeah.
And then, getting each and every one of those features to a level where we felt that it feels like an Indiana Jones mechanic, and feels fun and polished enough to fit together with the whole package.
It's a very interesting point that you raised, because this is something that we were working a lot with, specifically on design side of things, in relation to also making sure that you constantly feel like Indiana Jones, because we don't have the luxury of having a reference point of for example, Indiana Jones and the Lost Crusade or Raiders of the Lost Ark TV series that shows 500 episodes of what he's doing when he's not hunting for that specific thing that he's obsessed with.
Yep.
In the movies, he's basically just following his golden path. Making a game that is not supposed to be just 6 hours of hunting down the golden path and finding the thing, but allow the player to explore a very vast and open world. Is that indie? Would indie, sidetrack from his golden path and doing things on the side? And yes, from a gameplay point of view, and to build a cool and fun, interesting adventure game, we absolutely need to allow the player to do that. We absolutely need the character to go off the main trail and do things on the other side. That was the kind of the mission that we had. Even when you are in the outskirts of the Giza map and doing some weird mystery or little side mission, you should still feel like Indiana Jones, and should still feel like it feeds back into the main storyline.
Anytime you're making a game, you're kind of searching for, what is this experience? We knew that, for example, exploration needed to be a big part. We wanted, from the start, we set out to do these kind of big sandbox style areas, but honestly, we didn't have the experience for what that meant. We have never done areas this big before at Machine Games or at Starbreeze. So how do we build those? How do we populate those? How do we pace those? That was stuff we needed to figure out throughout the development. But of course, we knew it needed to feel like Indiana Jones. But exactly what that means, that's something you kind of need to discover by testing stuff.
Yeah.
Being underground for an hour and a half in a single dungeon, is that Indiana Jones, or is that too much? Does that become, a dungeon crawler game? And throughout the development, we found a lot of stuff that were like these small mysteries are one of my favorite design elements in this game. How do we do those self-contained but still feed into the fantasy of being Indiana Jones? How do we produce those? How do we introduce those to the player in a way where it's not icons on a map, for example, but something that the player can discover on their own? That feels more like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
So finding such elements throughout the development, that's probably more correct than saying that we knew exactly what we wanted to do from the start.
Those small little nuggets of information or bits and pieces of indie throwing out comments on things. Because what's interesting with that to me is it gives layers and depth to the world. It suggests that this is a rich world. And I think that's what we've been trying to pick up on, and specifically going into the aspect of exploration and doing a game that is much more than just a linear game and has more of an open-ended solution type of setup. Really expanding the fantasy of being Indiana Jones, having a rich world where you can do a lot of different things. I think that's been really scary and interesting.
It's hard, right? Because you have a level of fidelity that you need to achieve as a AAA game. Like the art needs to be top notch. At the same time, you want to, interactivity was a big pillar, if you will, for this game. Like, how do we make as much stuff in the world as we can interactive, so we can hide interactions? Like, creating a mystery around every corner was something I tried to, say every chance I got, and to do that through interactivity. That's what makes it interesting, because it becomes a player. It's the player that discovers the mystery, and finding the balance. How far can we push that without completely tearing up our production processes, so we can make it to this fidelity that we all expect it to be?
So the story kicks off when an ancient relic is stolen from the college where Indiana Jones works. He's determined to track down the thief, and Indy stumbles into this ancient conspiracy involving the theory of the Great Circle, as we call it. A Great Circle is a strange alignment of ancient sites around the globe, and a set of mysterious artifacts connected to it. But Indy isn't the only one in search for answers. The enemy are scoring the world for these artifacts, believing that they hold some kind of power. And to stop them, there's only one thing he can do, and that is to find the artifacts first.
One of the most important tasks was finding the right actor to fill the shoes of Harrison Ford as Indy. A seemingly impossible job until the emergence of Troy Baker.
Extremely stressful, I would say, from time to time. It's been one of the singular things, at least from my point of view, being, creative director and, to the extent responsible for, audio, animation and art, how things look, sound and behave. So getting that right was extremely stressful and, difficult. It would be a lie to say anything else. But if we didn't have Troy, I have a hard time seeing that this would have been...
there's really no real alternative that we can consider at this point.
So you can't really underline that enough, Troy's contribution. And I think I've said before, but I'll say it again. When I heard the first test lines from his audition, I thought it was the reference lines. So, and I was like, oh yeah, cool. Okay, that's the reference lines of Harrison Ford. It's like, no, that was Troy. I was like, are you kidding me? But that was surreal. And then when we've seen and follow him throughout the entire production, seeing him in either it's just in VO sessions, recordings, or full motion capture or whatnot, and see the transformation that he's doing when he goes into character. It's real craftsmanship. Rare, I would say.
Probably the hardest thing I've ever done. If it's not a challenge, I'm bored, and I don't like being bored. I want to be challenged. So hopefully, when I take on a project, it's something that I've never done before, and so I want to rise to that occasion. I want to meet that challenge head on. And for me, the thing that I realized about this role specifically is that this is a partnership between you and I, because I'm not the only one playing Indiana Jones. So are you. So it's not so much about, do I make you believe that I'm Indiana Jones? Do I make you believe that you're Indiana Jones? Because that ultimately is the goal. You are the one that's going to play this. So I have to do my part in that so that you feel that this is Indiana Jones, but then it's over to you. And when you pick up the controller, you better feel like you are the one who's cracking the whip. You are the one who's throwing the punch. You are the one who's sliding through the tunnel, escaping barely with your life. So the beauty of that is that I have 200 plus people that are working to make sure that that character, my performance, my part of that goes into the assembly line and comes out on the other side looking and feeling like Indiana Jones, so that when you take over, now you feel like you're Indiana Jones.
It's been great working with Troy. We've spent a lot of time with him over the last few years, and It was maybe an unexpected choice at first, but from the moment we watched his audition tape, we were just totally sold. He's just a great actor. He's put so much effort into the role as well. You can tell he's just this huge fan of Indiana Jones. You know, he knows so much about the films and the canon. We've just been in a VO session recently with him, and he was improvising lines. You know, wouldn't Indy say it a bit more like this, or commenting on lines that we've written that we thought were, you know, subtle Easter eggs just for the die-hard Indy fans, and he'll pick up on it straight away. Oh yeah, that's the thing from blah blah blah. You know, he just knows it. It's not faking it, but and it's also not just the dialogue as well. He's, you know, it's not just a voiceover actor. He's the full thing. We do full performance capture, the body, the face, and the voice all recorded at the same time, and he's got the physical acting nailed down as well. He does a really good job of capturing the character of Indy, specifically as well. I mean, his character in the first few movies, the earlier ones, which is where our game is set, of course. He just does it perfectly. It's been so much fun working with Troy. Really good actor.
Yeah, we really found the perfect person with Troy Baker. He just captured the heart of the character so good. So we're super happy about it.
I think what I was trying to do in the very beginning, the intentions were pure, but the end result was that I was focused so much on just trying to do this impression and making sure that, do you believe? My successes have taught me nothing, but my failures have taught me everything. And I had a failure moment. And what I love, especially now, is I get to share this wonderful anecdote about Tony, because I had this one moment on set where all my preparation failed me, and everything that I was trying to do to convince everybody that I deserved this role just came culminating to a head, and I lost it on set. But it was definitely a moment of frustration.
The late, great Tony Todd had been cast in the role of Locus in an incredible performance that would be one of his last. Todd would step in as a mentor to Baker during these tough and uncertain times.
And I walked, we wrapped our day, and I walked back to the hotel, and I walked into the lobby, and there in the lobby bar was Tony. I set my backpack down, and he goes, "T, let me buy you a drink." And that was 6:30 in the afternoon, and about 3 o'clock in the morning is when I finally went up to bed. And so he kind of helped me let go. And I woke up Monday morning, and I decided to have a completely different process. And I get to set, and Tom Key looked at me and he said, "Just trust that it will be there." And that was it for me. That was like, oh, right. Because Indiana Jones doesn't wake up in the morning and go, "Remember, you're Indiana Jones." He just goes to work, or he just gets off the plane or gets off the boat, and there he is. And so it's such a trite cliche, but it's like, just be. And once I just let go and realized, again, not the hindrances, but the liberations, that's when I was like, oh, right, I'm on an adventure, and this is supposed to be fun.
And it's not only the voice either.
Yeah,
it's the whole execution.
The whole performance. Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of people, might not fully understand. And I mean, if you're game dev, then potentially you can understand parts of it, of course. But to many fans of the franchise, or people just playing the game, it's sometimes hard to understand and know like everything that goes on behind this, because he, as Jens says, is not only the voice, but it's so much more complex than that.
Yeah.
Because we have the full performance.
It's a full, totally nuanced and ranged acting performance.
Yeah. Because his face is driving the rig. He's not only making the voice, he's also mimicking and doing all the things, trying to have the correct facial animations going on. Then obviously sometimes we need to go in and tweak that and make sure that it gets, but he's doing that. And then also doing the, mimicking the body and body language. And at the same time doing acting, against someone else. And sometimes doing, very complicated scenes. And then you get all of that combined together. So that is really like full talent performance of impressive range. And I mean, one of the coolest things with Troy is that his passion for this project and his devotion to the project has just been, through the roof. He's done so much more than he's been asked to do, just because he has also, have a great passion for the character and for the game. So it has added so much. He's been very, very much he's even been participating in like blockout sessions before the mocap sessions. He hasn't just showed up and then delivering. Yeah. He's been really trying to be part of the process.
So a true collaborator.
Yes.
In every sense.
Yes. And then of course that wouldn't be possible if he would have been an ass, but he's an absolutely fantastic person to be around and work with as well.
Yeah.
So it has just been a genuine, very, very nice experience, getting to know a very, very humble and nice person, and then at the same time a very true professional in terms of executing on his craft, through the roof in terms of expectations that we had.
I would say that I participated in this game in a way that I've never collaborated in a project before. I like to be brought in as early as possible. I want to see when we first started to crawl so that I can celebrate when we finally run. I'm not the actor that I go to my trailer and I come out and I say my lines, I hit my mark and I go home. I am definitely one, I want to roll my sleeves up. I want to get my hands dirty. I want to peek behind the curtain and see how the sausage is made. And we would do these previs sessions where we would they were kind of like our blocking rehearsals before we would get all of our actors together, because it's really expensive to fly in your entire cast. And when you're on the stage, there's a lot of questions that come out. And the thing that I found that works best is if all of the work is done before you hit the stage, it makes that day way easier to hit. So we would work weeks ahead of time with the scripts that we had and the scenes that we had to shoot. They would bring me in along with Tom Keegan, our performance director, Kyle Klutz, who was our DOP, Mitra, our producer, our writers, and we would all get in the room and go, okay, let's work out the problems that happen when you start moving bodies around in space of these scenes, so that when we get to the stage with our actors, we've worked out a lot of that. And so in that, a lot of times the logic police in me comes out and going, why are we doing this? And I, something is pinging for me with this. And we were able to work through a lot of those problems. It was a wonderful process, and something that I hope I get to incorporate into other projects as well. But I was definitely, as deep as they would let me be in this, I wanted to be, and they were gracious enough to let me be a part of it. When you have the level of expectation with the aesthetic, right? There's a look that an Indiana Jones adventure has. And we needed to bring that into what we were doing. We wanted this to slot in perfectly with the movies, and that means we have to shoot it like a movie. So Kyle Klutz, who was our DOP, came in, and I've known Kyle for over a decade now. And we had 2 Aries with anamorphic lenses, and we were building dolly tracks, and we had jibs, and we were shooting this, which you typically will not do on a game. You will shoot this in the round, and then later you would come in with your cameras and actually be able to digitally, with software, be able to shoot your cameras. But we were actually physically shooting our cameras on the day, so that if there's a moment where, Indy's looking off into the sunset, and camera pushes in, I actually had a camera that was pushing in on me so that we could get that look as if this was Douglas Slocum shooting this in 81. And it's a really cool process. I love being on stage with someone who's never done performance capture before, and that first day is kind of like, I don't know what I'm wearing, and I've got this helmet with a camera on my face, and you're just trying to figure it all out. And then to see when it clicks for them, and to see when it goes from this hindrance to liberation, and the same childlike wonder when we ran around in our backyards and we were able to use our imagination to create these worlds. That's what this is. That's what this medium provides for us. And I love watching first-timers hit that moment.
Baker would ultimately receive the highest praise from the original Indiana Jones himself, Harrison Ford.
I think this guy did a great job. If I'd known he was so good, I would have done it myself.
Beyond just Troy Baker and Tony Todd, a world-class cast had been assembled for the game, including Barrios Gavrilis as the villain Emmerich Voss.
All the time. No, but no, you have to do your research as an actor. The whole ideology, background of the guy, but also about his personal agenda, like what really drives him, why is he the way he is, break it down to basic human psychology, and then you just dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and eventually you come to the core. Why does somebody have a certain greed for power? Because deep within he doesn't feel powerful at all, he feels powerless. And then he tries to prove to himself and to Indy, and to the whole world, that he's actually worthy, that he's actually the real Indiana Jones. Never play the villain, always promote the character's point of view. This is one of the basic things you have to do as an actor. If you played villainy, it becomes a superficial performance, right? So you gotta make him relatable to the audience, no matter how diametrically opposite he is morally seen from what we perceive as good and bad. In his own world, he's the good guy. So, and personalizing this, trying to find the spots where you match the character, obviously ideologically not, but deep within you do feel things you can work with, and then you just work your way up, and then yeah, you create a character. I mean, there will be points and times in the game where you as a player, you will agree more with Boss than with Indy. And that's ultimately due to very good writing, stunning performances, especially by this guy here. But this makes a good villain from a neutral perspective, that there will be times when you actually have to give it to him and say, hey, he's right about that. He's right about what he's saying. I may not agree with him, with his whole ideological background, hopefully not, but I do get his point. And that's the challenge you have as an actor. Make it relatable to the audience. Like, promote your character with a reckless abandon. That's what you got to do. He is definitely written as a very iconic villain. I will say that. I'm not going to say anything about my own performance. This is a verdict that the audience has to make. But for sure, he is on par with all the Wolfenstein villains we know from the past, which are very iconic. And of course, with the villains in the actual Indiana Jones movies. And hopefully the player will have a lot of hard time coping with a guy like Boss.
Most of the characters we meet in the game are new faces. You know, I think we have one familiar face there in the trailer as well that you probably recognized, and also because we start our story in Marshall College, it made sense to have Marcus Brody there to sort of ground it in the familiarity of Indy's home base. We also have a couple of other classic characters doing some smaller cameos, but you'll have to wait and see for yourself regarding those.
I think one of the greatest experiences for me personally in that game was working with such an amazing crew, starting from the cast, but the whole staff, the DOPs, the writers, the executives, and everyone. It was, if you ask me what was the biggest takeaway, it was working with these people, this guy here, with Ali and Tony, who are deeply missing today, and not only. That to me has been a really, I would even say, career-changing experience because of working with such great people. It's not a contradiction. You got to be best buds in order to be intense. I remember a scene where we couldn't quite break to the core of it until Tom Keegan, our director, told me, he gave me a really great note. He said, instead of trying to get into Indy's head, try to get into Troy's head. Try to really get him, make it personal. And acting is always personal. And then it changed the entire temperature of the scene, of the entire room, and everybody was like intrigued and like, oh my God, this scene works so much better than before. But it worked because it was personal, and because we got to bond on and off set. Troy and I, Ali and Tony, everyone together. It was an ensemble work. And I think if you play the game and you see the story and all the cinematics, I think it will show. You can tell that we really had great chemistry among each other.
The cast and crew were left heartbroken by the passing of Tony Todd, which came mere weeks before the game was released.
How lucky were we that we got that, and to be able to have that friendship. And what I loved is, you sharing the text thread, and it's like, man,
for sure.
The conversations that we had.
He was just the nicest guy on earth, man. He was encouraging me and really making me feel like I belong right there among those A-listers. And this is something that I'll never forget. Super grateful. And he was just the nicest guy. Like you said, hey T, let's have a drink, or Mario, let's go out on our day off. All these stories that it was short time but sweet time spent together. And we really miss him. We all wish he was here with us celebrating the release of our game and see our baby take off.
Yeah, he deserved to see this, man, because he worked so hard on this, and there was so much of this character. I mean, clearly it's Tony. Like it's his base, it's him. But so much of the character he built, and there were even times where like, hey, we're thinking of it being this, and he was like, no. It's like, I know who this character is. And he was true to that, and there was no half measures with him. It was all the way in.
As for the music, in stepped Gordy Hobb, a composer very familiar with Lucasfilm and the work of John Williams.
But yeah, I mean, the Star Wars series was huge. Indiana Jones was very huge in my youth. I mean, that was like such a big part of my growing up. That really defined what adventure was about, and kind of defined who I am as a person too, because like I became sort of a very adventurous person. I like exploring the world and traveling, and I look back on those moments of watching those films, and I think a lot of that sort of that passion and excitement about learning about the world came from watching those adventures, and so they were huge for me.
You said something, so I don't know where I saw it. It might have been on...
I got my start mostly in film. When I moved to Los Angeles, I came out here to go to school at USC, and I met a filmmaker there who made a lot of like short horror films, and that was like a really big thing for me. I was like, still to this day, big horror film buff, and that was sort of my goal when I moved to Los Angeles, was to kind of break into films by doing horror films. That's what I really loved. And but this guy made this film. He also made this sort of Star Wars fan film called Ryan versus Dorkman. And and I said, hey man, if you can raise enough money to like put a small orchestra together and we can like record this thing, I'll write this score for free. Let's do this. And we managed to raise enough money for it. And so I wrote the music for this 5-minute Star Wars lightsaber battle fan film. And somebody at Lucasfilm saw it. It kind of blew up on YouTube, back when getting like 5 million views was like, you're really doing something. Now that's kind of like, everything gets 5 million views. But back then that was huge. And, someone at Lucas saw it, and they were looking for a composer for an Indiana Jones video game called The Staff of Kings. And actually reached out to me and said, hey, we heard the music in this video. Would you be interested in auditioning for this gig? And so I did, and I ended up getting the gig. That was my first video game score, was Indiana Jones. So, and that led to every single thing that's happened in my game career, because the next thing after that was Star Wars: The Old Republic, and it just kind of snowballed from there, and, all led up to this moment. So it feels like kind of coming full circle, getting to revisit that franchise that sort of kicked it all off for me in a way. It's very cool, you know what I mean? And what I find particularly cool about what I get to do is that not only am I getting to work with these franchises I love and work with the influences of John Williams, who's, for me, such an inspirational composer who really shaped my entire life in many ways, but I'm also getting to do my own thing, like really bring my own aesthetic to this. And so like, I'm always looking for ways to fold in the indie theme, like use the Raiders March theme, but in a subtle way that's, not, beating over the head with it. It's like reserving it for that perfect moment where it really something, cinematic calls for bringing that theme in, and then trying to find ways to weave it into my own music and in my own musical aesthetic, which is really just kind of, it's fun. I'm interfacing directly with the audio director. And so when I write a piece of music and send it over, they put it in the game, they see how it feels, and then if they have feedback, they give me feedback, and then I reiterate and go back and forth until we're all happy with it. Once they're happy with it, then it gets sent to Lucasfilm.
for example.
So
and
great.
And they have a whole department for games, and then their game department has a music department whose entire job is to listen to music that's going into products that are based on their franchises, and make sure that it feels like brand accurate. So they're listening to that, and they're making sure that it fits Indiana Jones or Star Wars or whatever it may be. And sometimes it'll get kicked back to me, like it should feel more like this, and I'll have to redo things. So it's constantly it's very like a cycle of sending things in, throwing things over the fence. It goes through a bunch of different departments and for approval, and sometimes it comes back, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, the music was composed by Gordy Harp. He's composed the score for, I don't know, so many different Lucasfilm video games now, so he's just perfect for Indiana Jones, really. We were extremely happy when he agreed to compose our soundtrack. He's really caught the vibe of the classic John Williams scores, and fantastic composer. Really pleased for him when he won the Grammy recently.
So we did it kind of all over the place because there's a lot of music. There's about almost like 5 hours, a little over 5 hours of music in the game. We recorded it in batches over time, rather than like with a film, you would write all the music first, and then once it's all done and approved, then you go record it, mix it, put it in the film, and it's done. And with games, oftentimes you'll write maybe a quarter of the music, then you go record it, then you come back and you write more music, and then a year later you go record more of it. And so that's kind of how we approached this. So the first couple of batches we did all at Abbey Road, in London, with a full 100-piece orchestra of the best musicians on the planet, and then a year later we went back and we did some more at Abbey Road, and we also did some in Vienna at Synchron Stage, which it's a fantastic recording studio and some amazing musicians. And then what was actually really cool about this project in particular for me is I got to kind of revisit some of my roots from college, because my study track was jazz composition. I was really into like writing for big bands when I was in college, and there's a couple scenes in this game where Indy kind of discovers like sort of a cache of old recordings of like jazz musicians. And so initially they wanted to like just maybe license some music from that era, and I raised my hand and said, what if I wrote it? What if I could like tell me what your budget was going to be for, doing the licensing, and let me see if I can, for that same budget, write it myself, hire a jazz big band and record it. And we ended up doing that and recording it all in Nashville with like these amazing jazz musicians. So, we recorded in London, Vienna, Nashville. We did a bunch of percussion overlays here in Los Angeles. I mean, it's, there's about 300 musicians all in all that played on this score.
So, finally, in December 2024, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle was released to the public and became an immediate hit, winning numerous accolades and being labeled by many as the best Indiana Jones product since the original trilogy of the 80s. While fans hopefully await news of a sequel, the developers behind Great Circle had these reflective words.
One of the most exciting things for me is just seeing the energy that hits the team, the enthusiasm. We put so much love and energy into the things we show. And, getting to actually share it with the world is always great. You just get a big buzz and lift in the team's energy after that, which is great.
I think it goes for pretty much everything we do. Obviously, it's very important for us to have or to work with games that we feel very passionate about, and because it's this type of industry we're in when it's where we focus so much on the creative aspects of things. So we really want to make sure that whatever we do, it's something that the team can really feel strong about, and make sure that the team feel very motivated in building. So I think all of that is super important to us, to make sure that we have the right projects lined up for the future. And Indiana Jones is a fantastic brand and such a classic adventure game, so it's just an honor to be able to work on it.
I think, at least for me, and I think that's true for a lot of people in the studio, this has been a very, very personal project. A lot of us we have invested so much into it. So coming out on the other end, seeing that we the mission that we had and what we believed in paid off in terms of fans loving it, So that's one part of, the closure of this, basically, as, the sensation of, whew, nice, there it is. And it turned out really nice. And then there are so many small stories throughout, the production itself that are like, fond memories, but without taking up too much time talking about all the good stuff that I remember, but at least a few of them is, for example, when I felt and when we saw that, okay, likeness is on. Now we've nailed it. We had a certain scene that we were polishing the hell out of to try to nail the look and the visual fidelity of the in-game render, driven by Troy's performance. And when we finally saw, okay, there it is, that was like, okay, then we can do it. We can do it. That's out of the question. And another one for me on a personal level as well was meeting and see Tony Todd, working with him and seeing him acting and performing. And then obviously extremely sad we all are at Machine Games with his passing and that he's no longer with us. But having the chance and opportunity to actually work with him and seeing him deliver the Locust character, that was also extremely cool.
For me, there's this immense feeling of being grateful and thankful for everything that led up to this game coming out in the shape it did. Like, as you know, as a game developer, you get tunnel vision by the end. You really don't know, like, you have a sense of is it crap or not, of course.
Yeah. But you're at that, like, God, let's just put it out.
Yeah, and you have your date. You work toward your date. You put in the extra hours. The whole team really came together, and you have no idea how much stuff went in for the last 6 months of the project and things we changed. So it's this, bubbling soup that gets put into this package and put out there. And, if you fail there, and there's so many points you could have failed there, like even like you talked about Troy's performance, if that wasn't up to par, the response wouldn't have been as great, and you would have...
Well, it simply couldn't have come out.
Yeah.
Right?
And you would have kind of lost 4 or 5 years of investment.
Yeah.
So, pew is what you said, like, we kind of made it. So we don't take that lightly. That's amazing. We're so incredibly happy that we didn't fuck this up.
And I think, it's also something, talking about the great experience making this game and, in the aftermath looking at, what's the highlights of all of this coming out. And one thing that we also talked a lot about before and internally is, it takes so many to do this, the full team, the full studio. And what that is doing is you're creating so many new friendships, you're crafting so many new strong bonds with your coworkers, and you come together so much more stronger after going through this type of hellfire experience.
Yeah.
So, in the end, it's always a shout out, to the team back home and the amazing team we have at Machine Games.